Cybercrime can cost companies millions of dollars in damage, and the fight to prevent attacks is getting more expensive all the time. Large U.S. companies spent an average of just over $15 million this year responding to cybercrime, according to a survey. It's up 19% from last year and up 82% than when the survey started 6 years ago. The money is spent on detection, investigation, recovery, and after-the-fact costs like losses to a business or its customers. As technology advances, cyber crimes and fighting them have become increasingly complicated. It takes 1.9 million and an average of 46 days to resolve a cyber attack. That length of time is an increase of 30% over the past 6 years. In the meeting, the team wasn't surprised about the rise in spending.
I can't imagine a world in which that number wouldn't always go higher, because the reality is you either are paying because you've been hacked, or you're paying because you're paying for someone to make sure you don't get hacked.
This report is going to have the same headline for the next forever years.
Right.
The worry about that is that we all get kind of numb to it. Well, yeah, Home Depot got hacked,
Right.
Target got hacked, but it didn't affect me, so what do I care?
I think it is going to start affecting individuals, though. I wouldn't be surprised if people have to start taking out cyber crime insurance because their homes are going to be ever so connected.
I spoke with Claudiu Popa, the CEO of Informatica Corp, and asked him whether the amount that companies are spending on cybercrime seems like a lot.
No, it doesn't actually. It actually is. It's fairly consistent with what we thought it would be. There's been various indications that it would kind of fall around this number, and we're seeing a year-over-year increase.
And in fact, the rate of increase, if we go over, I think, 6 years, is pretty dramatic, right? 80+% in terms of what companies are spending. And yet, I think there are experts in cybersecurity who would say it's still not enough, that companies aren't quite awake to the real risks that they run.
We're not exactly there yet. So we're expecting that number to double every 10 years or every 5 years even, if in fact you're paying attention and you're vigilant enough to look at all the right indicators.
So how do most companies realize they've been the victim of a cyber attack?
That's the hard part. In the States, there's a lot more legislation, and there's a lot more pressure on companies to report breaches. Therefore, if they're responsible for reporting breaches, they're also responsible for investing in technology that will allow them to monitor breaches. Here in Canada, that adoption has been very slow, and for that reason, we don't have access to that kind of granularity as far as the numbers. But all of that is changing with changes to the privacy legislation.
Now, presumably there are different types of breaches, but for most companies, what's the risk? When we talk about kind of protecting themselves against cyber attacks, what is their big concern?
Well, the big concern is financial. Organizations are storing and amassing ever more impressive databases. They're collecting user preferences. They're collecting any piece of customer ID that they can. And the reason for that is so that they can better target those customers and address their needs. So you can't just run a hot dog stand anymore. Now every small company is a big data repository that knows everything about every single one of their clients and finely tunes their products and solutions to those needs. And because of that, they're the custodians of information that is very, very sensitive, and it's in fact private in many cases. So the responsibility for protecting the privacy of those customers falls squarely on the shoulders of those organizations.
In fact, a lot of us give a lot of information to different companies, and if they were hacked and or married together, it would reveal an awful lot of private information about individuals. Do we have a kind of an overly confident sense that companies can protect our privacy?
Not in Canada, not at the moment. The legislative pressure hasn't been there. Compliance pressure has exceeded legislative pressure. So we have, on a sector-by-sector basis and on a per-industry basis, we've had standards, compliance pressure that has really resulted in specific requirements from each and every company to record, document, even dispose of information securely. And what's happened is an increase in awareness from the public, an increase in awareness from customers, and certainly added concern from management boards and boards of directors has increased the amount of investment that's gone into such technologies. But until the law changes, we're not going to see much in the way of reporting of those breaches.
I heard recently, anecdotally, about a type of cyber attack in which malware takes over your corporate network and starts to freeze files, and then you get a ransom note if you want them unfrozen. What are the many different types of attacks that companies need to worry about? Is it privacy breaches, or are these other sort of more inventive types of attacks going to occur?
Well, that's a primary reason why the cost of breaches has been going up. The cost of data losses has been going up. The operational costs and the recovery costs have been increasing. It takes months to recover from a significant breach these days, and because of the reactive nature of our security technologies, cyber attackers and criminals have had to be really inventive as far as the ways to break into companies. And when they do break in, they operate stealthily for months or years at a time. So to get them out of there takes a long time, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of money, and it can result in cyber extortion, just the way you said, in APTs, which are advanced persistent threats, which are very covert pieces of software that will lurk in the company's systems for as long as they can and watch transactions go on. They'll steal passwords, they'll steal user data, they'll impersonate users, they'll steal identities, etc. These are major threats to any organization's existence at this point, because if you're out of business for that long, and we can think about Sony's last year's breach at Sony that basically kept them off their computers for months at a time. Most organizations don't have the cash flow to survive for that long, so it's an existential threat as much as a reputational threat to the existence of companies.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. As always, great to have your expertise, Claudiu.
You're welcome.
Claudiu Popa is CEO of Informatica Corporation.